Hello, everyone, wherever you are. We have just seen how many participants we have joining us from all around the world. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. As we begin our session, please do continue to share with us where you're joining us from. Use the chat function to connect with each other, to pose questions, to comment on our presentations. And let's begin to build that sense of community around this rich and important conversation. I want to welcome you all to INQAAHE Talks. It's a series of webinars that we aim to use to connect our membership with the broader international higher education and quality assurance community to discuss today's pressing issues. We bring together international experts and practitioners to share their insight, their challenges, their best practices, and their proposed solutions to ensure that higher education and quality assurance continue to serve at their best our increasingly interconnected communities. If you're not yet familiar with our agency, INQAAHE is the international network for quality assurance agencies in higher education. It's a worldwide association comprising more than 300 organisations, all of whom are active in the theory and practice of quality assurance in higher education. INQAAHE offers members many services, including a journal, a bulletin, funding for projects, a research award, and an annual forum or conference. My name is Vicky. I'm the president of INQAAHE and also the chief executive of the QAA in the UK. Today, it is my real honour to chair this INQAAHE Talk session titled Global Trends in Quality Assurance, where we come together to celebrate a significant achievement of the INQAAHE community. Over the past 4 years, we have worked on the second Global Trends in Tertiary Education, Quality Assurance Challenges and Opportunities in Internal and External QA. This study examines the efficiency, the relevance, and the transformative power of quality assurance and accreditation worldwide. I'm delighted to say this study will be published in book form on the 18th of December. We have a discount code, which we will add into the chat. There's one for 2025, which becomes valid on the publication date. That was the 18th of December. And there will be another one for 2026. The publication draws on experts from around the world. This work provides a really comprehensive and impressive overview of developmental trends, which helps us to better understand how historical insights, policy realities, and implementation perspectives can inform sustainable futures for quality assurance. And we are deeply honoured to have two of the wonderful experts who led this work and who will share some of their thoughts on the development and the insights gleaned from this really remarkable undertaking. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Susanna Karahanyan, who is a former president of INQAAHE and who has led on this study, and Kevin Kinzer, who is the Professor of Education Policy Studies and Senior Scientist in the Centre for the Study of Higher Education at Penn State University. We had advertised that Francesco Pedro would be with us, but unfortunately at the very last moment he's unable to join us today and he sends us his profound apologies. Before handing over to our esteemed panel, I do have some words of housekeeping. I always think I won't do when we're meeting in a virtual forum, but still. For your information, we have 1.5 hours together today, a truly generous allocation of time. Thank you to our experts for making themselves so freely available to us. The structure of this will be a semi-structured conversation. We'll have a short presentation from Susanna, followed by a panel discussion. And after that, we're going to open up the floor to you, the audience. So please do be thinking of questions, comments, interjections that you would like to make. In the meantime, we have muted all of your microphones to help with the smooth running of the event, and your cameras have also been disabled, but we are very keen to hear from you. Please do use the Q&A function to ask your questions and to inform discussion at any point. But to keep things moving, we will hold the questions until the dedicated Q&A session. So to be clear, put your Q&A questions in the Q&A function at any time. I will pose them to the panel during the Q&A session. Please note the webinar will be recorded and it will be made available for free access following the event on the INQAAHE webpage. And that's the formalities done with. Susanna, could I please hand over to you to start things off for us?
Thank you very much, Vicky, for a very beautiful introduction to the study and to all the INQAAHE scope of activities. And hi, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and wherever you are, you come from all the globe. Hi, everybody, and thank you very much for taking time to be part of this prominent event for all of us when we introduce the study we have carried out for the last 3 years, and we have come to this culminative moment where we are sharing the pride of having achieved this major success. So let me share my screen with you, and then I will share my slides so that we could have a brief introduction into the study. I hope you see my screen in full. Could you please confirm?
All good. All good, Susan.
Okay, great. The second global trends in tertiary education quality assurance challenges and opportunities. It's a study that looks globally at and regionally, zooms regionally into the challenges and opportunities from both internal and external quality assurance. And it didn't come as out of blue, so there is a long history behind this study, which originated in early 2000s with UNESCO. The initiative came from the Arab states, and the purpose was just to delve deeper into the systems as the quality assurance systems were emerging in different parts of the globe. UNESCO's purpose was to do the scoping study to understand what is the growth rate and how they could be supportive in establishing regional and national and other types of quality assurance networks in support of a quality assurance movement. It became a cyclical exercise, and with each year the scope was enhanced, and we had more and more regions joining in, and also the study methodology was enriched from year on year. As you would see, the first 3 cycles were based on a survey, but afterwards we already moved into covering all the globes, all the 7 regions globally: Arab states, Latin America and Caribbean, Africa, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Asia Pacific, North America, and Africa. So they all were covered there. And then the methodology expanded to have a mixed method approach, and the mixed method approach enrolled we had surveys, we had focus groups, and in the second global study it already came to fruition, and we had even more extended the methodologies, which I'll talk more about later on. You see that it started from UNESCO, and then it moved with UNESCO with INQAAHE, and then gradually INQAAHE took the lead in this project, and currently this has become an INQAAHE project which is published every 5 years, and there is a commitment to publish it from now, in the 5 years time also. So the global studies, the first global trends were published in 2020. And the second one comes in 2025, and the third one is planned to launch in 2027, so that the publication comes out in 2030. And you would see that the publication came out first with Brill Sense, and now it's a Brill that is leading it, and we have the esteemed editors to lead this global perspective, being in the series of publications, which is the Global Perspective on Higher Education, and our series is number 57 in Second Global Trends. So one of the many ways that INQAAHE bridges systems globally, as Vicky mentioned, is through bringing in different quality assurance bodies and university associations, regional networks together to complete this study, to carry out this study and understand the trends, look into the trends and challenges. And also one of the prominent things here in the study that we're also covering the historical trends as well. When a couple of decades ago I came to quality assurance, I was really interested in learning on how this all originated. And apart from a couple of articles here and there, there was not a comprehensive coverage of the historical trends in quality assurance. And one of the major aims of this study was to comprehensively cover the historical trends, starting from late 19th century, where the US launched quality assurance practices. Then it moved gradually to Philippines, Japan, then UK, and in the 1980s already globally we started observing the massification of quality assurance providers. But along with that, we also saw the development of quality assurance networks, and INQAAHE being the first quality assurance network with 8 organizations established in 1991, is proudly entering into its 35th anniversary next year. And this book comes also as one of the manifestations of its contribution to global quality assurance community. So, you see that from each region, we had both regional networks engaged in the study. We also had INQAAHE members who have committed to this. We had university associations who contributed to this study and made this work. In total, if you look at the regional and global engagement, and it was all carried out, the most notable part of it is that it was all carried out on voluntary basis with a noble mission to contribute to the regional and global tertiary education quality cause. And believe me, no penny went into this study apart from the gracious contribution from the INQAAHE board to make this study an open source. So you will have an open source publication this time, and plus hard copies, as we already distributed some announcement. So basically, regional and international organizations engaged in the study were around 30, and those were quality assurance bodies and university associations that supported us, including UNESCO Higher Education, ISALC Higher Education Office. Around 80 experts worked in the data collection through all these organizations, and 37 authors and co-authors worked on all the chapters of the book. So the methodology evolved around, we had a huge round of literature review, document analysis. We started also with UN directives, regional frameworks of quality assurance and qualifications framework. We looked at relevant research. And also we tried to link, part of it, we tried to link on how quality assurance, what is the place of the role of quality assurance within the broader framework of higher education policy making, the higher education landscape and the ecosystem. So this is something that we have placed into embedded in the study. Then we had baseline data, and as you will all agree, data is the core, and data is the most problematic part of you come across when you do any type of study of this scale. We were able to, thanks to the 80 experts that I have mentioned, we were able to collect data from 196 countries. You will not believe, but well, even the simple exercise, the number of qualifications, national qualifications frameworks, if you go to the specific allocated, dedicated website, you wouldn't find the most recent information there. So we had to go back to the governments and to the relevant quality assurance bodies to have that information and come up with more accurate representation to understand who we are, where we are, how many are us, and what are we doing to support the overall global tertiary education community. Then we collected the baseline data on the number of tertiary education institutions, quality assurance bodies, recognized quality assurance bodies, national qualifications framework, signatories of UN regional and global conventions. So we looked at all these data to come up with rounded and comprehensive analysis of quality assurance from internal and external quality assurance perspective, and where we stand and how we contribute to relevance of tertiary education, to efficiency, and to its transformative power. We had surveys, and the surveys were addressed to both tertiary education institutions and quality assurance bodies, and we administered it in 7 languages. We had 989 responses from tertiary education institutions and 241 responses from quality assurance bodies from 99 countries. To build on the results of the survey, we also had case studies in some of the regions where there was a need to delve deeper into the new practices or practices that were standing out. And also we concluded it with the focus group discussions. In total, we organized 34 focus groups, 17 with external quality assurance bodies and 17 with tertiary education institutions. All in all, 82 countries across 7 regions participated in the focus groups with 277 participants. And the focus groups were conducted in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. Basically, you see that we had a very thorough data collection and analysis of the trends to come up with the understanding of what is going on and what is the role of quality assurance and how we could make it a more impactful tool for tertiary education system at all. So the book itself consists of 2 major parts. Part 1 is the global trends. This is where we discuss, we look at quality assurance from external and internal perspectives across all the regions, the global trends. And we start with the introductory remarks on the study, the methodology, and then we move on to presenting the global megatrends. And within the global megatrends, what is how we see external quality assurance and internal quality assurance, their roles, and how they evolved, and how they support diversity of policy mechanisms out there that higher education systems, tertiary education systems, start to implement. Chapter 3 delves deeper into the external quality assurance, the global trends in external quality assurance. Chapter 4 in internal quality assurance. And then chapter 5 is UNESCO's contribution, where we look at how quality assurance supports sustainable development goals and recognition conventions. And here we are covering both regional conventions and the Global Recognition Convention to understand how where the gaps are and what else quality assurance could be doing to support those big agendas on tertiary education. Part 2 looks at regional trends, and here you would see regions covered already. We zoom into each region separately. We have overview of Africa, trends in Africa, in Arab states, Asia Pacific. Chapter 9, you would see all in all 3 sub-chapters where we start with Europe in general, and Europe under the umbrella of all European higher education area. You will see Eastern Europe and Western Europe covered separately. The purpose was to not to overlook and to try to concentrate on 2 developments and the huge diversity that European system also brings with itself, with historical trends and also the current realities. We look at Latin America and Caribbean, and here the 2 regions, Latin America and Caribbean, are delved deeper into, and the trends come into identifying the challenges and opportunities there. And also North America is of course part of this, where we cover 3 countries are included in North America: Mexico, Canada, and the US. So in total, we are covering 196 countries in this study. The editors and authors of the book, and for the global trends, it was Kevin, Francesc, and myself who covered the chapters. I was bringing in the external quality assurance perspective, while Kevin was delving from internal quality assurance perspective. And then Francesc, Pedro, and the 3 of us, we were looking together and on how different policy instruments are coming together to support the higher education and tertiary education agenda overall. You see the authors from regional chapters, and all 37 of them on the screen. We will be sharing this with you so that you have it at hand as well. And also, I would like to acknowledge the networks, the diversity of networks that contributed to the data collection. And here you see the regional networks in quality assurance, and also the university associations that came together to support us in the data collection and making this study, this global trends to become a more comprehensive, more solid, robust in its methodology, and more detailed when it comes to issues that were explored within the study in terms of efficiency, relevance, and transformative power of QA. I would like to stop here with the special acknowledgements that I would like to share for UNESCO office that supported us in this study. Special thanks also go to Kevin Kinzer for his insights and his huge contribution to making this study a success. And also INQAAHE Catalunya team who worked with the data management, data analysis, and all the analytical activities were carried out by Dr. Jose Luis Mateo, who actually helped in pushing this study forward. And most importantly, I would like to convey special thanks to INQAAHE board and secretariat under the lead of its current president, Vicky Stott, and immediate past president, Deb Adair, for the exceptional support throughout the whole study. And it is due to the decision of the board and due to the leadership of the presidents that this study, this publication has become an open source so that the broader tertiary education community could benefit from it. So it will be available once more as an open source in its soft format and also in hard copies throughout the whole 2026. You will have a chance to get it at the discounted rate as well. I will stop here and give the floor to Vicky to take this forward.
Thank you very much, Susanna. That was a fascinating overview. I always so enjoy listening to you talk about this topic. You're so passionate about it, but also so much insight comes through just from the way that you describe it. I mean, it's incredibly impressive, the reach of countries, agencies, individuals that you've brought into that. I guess I would like to start the discussion by asking both you and Kevin a very simple question. Obviously, the book isn't published yet. I'm looking to finish my seasonal shopping, gifts for families. Why would I include this book? Why should we read it? Susanna, do you want to? Oh, Kevin, you go first.
Yeah, I'll just step in here and just name a few things and then pass it off to Susanna, who has other things. First of all, greetings from State College, Pennsylvania, USA, home of Pennsylvania State University. Glad to be able to join you all in this global environment that we have here to be able to share information that hopefully is relevant and important to all of you. And I also, in acknowledgements, I want to add the acknowledgement that Susanna left off of her acknowledgements, acknowledge Susanna herself for her leadership on this. She is an irresistible force when it comes to pulling this thing together. And it literally could not have happened without her dedication over years, pushing, pulling, prodding, encouraging, and making sure that we were putting forward a quality product that was thoughtful and useful in its entirety. So thank you, Susanna. I needed to acknowledge you on that. So why do the book? Okay, so we all need gifts for our friends and family. It is free, so it's easy to do. That's one reason. Actually, in all honesty, I think the fact that it is open source, that INQAAHE had the resources and the foresight to be able to put it in open resource, does make it accessible in a way that there are few other resources like this really are. And in particular, thinking about it as a resource, the global nature of it, it is the scope of the study is notable, as Susanna documented, all of the people, all of the regions, all of the investment that we made and they made in pulling this together, I think is important. It's rare in any study to attempt such a global coverage, and the achievement here, I think, is notable in a way that I don't know of any other publication that would have this at its foot. The fact that it's comparative also. It's not just lumping everybody together and saying, here is quality assurance. It's comparative. We're looking at the regions. We're looking at individual countries within the regions. We're trying to make a sense of, well, what does it look like, not just at the global scale, but what does it look like on the ground at the local level? How do different regions think about it in different sorts of ways, and how you might be able to understand it from there? And so it's global and it's comparative. And by that, I think it's important to say that a lot of times we look at quality assurance from a national lens, or just take it in one space and not really seeing, okay, well, how does this connect to what happens next door? What happens in the other hemisphere? What happens in other languages, other intellectual traditions? And we take that on. Sometimes in some depth in certain areas where we have the information. And what we find, it's something that you see in comparative research a lot in the work that I've done as well. What seems unique when looking at a single case, often you find that there are parallels across cases, and it's not so unique. That there are ways of looking at things and pulling things together. So we don't just have to take these blinders and put them around each individual country, but we are able to look across comparatively. And again, I think that's a unique aspect of this book. The third, I think I'm on third. The insider component of it is also important. As Susanna put it, was over 80 people that committed their time and energy. These are people that know their systems inside and out. They are the experts, and we're not just looking at it from a 30,000 foot level, 30,000 meter level, trying to understand what it is that happens. We're actually looking at the people who are really invested in it. Some of them invested from a practitioner perspective, from a university leadership perspective, others working in the associations, the quality assurance environment, some scholars and researchers, people who have published in this area as well. This is external expertise and internal expertise, which I think is also really important. The surveys themselves, while our response rate, you might say, oh, we only had this number of surveys, how can we actually take? The reason we can do it is because of the insiders we had reviewing this information. It was all vetted and understood that, yeah, this is relevant, this is important, this is accurate information that came from this. There's a critical component to it as well. One of my colleagues, Dan Levy, who's a prominent scholar of international and comparative higher education, particularly in the private sector, he has a line that he says, the clash between what should be and what is produces massive normative dissonance. He's a scholar, so those are scholarly words, but what he means by that is we often think about how these things ought to look, and we don't really recognize how they actually look. And what we do is we say, okay, what is it how does it actually look, and trying to get past it that way. It's a reform and future oriented, so it's not just an ode to accreditation, but we look at what works, what doesn't work, relevance to the community, consideration for policies and policymakers, wish lists for what comes next is an important component of it as well. And then finally, just, as someone who studies this sort of thing, it's a single volume source of baseline data that doesn't exist anywhere else. And the reason it doesn't exist anywhere else is because we collected it by hand. We went through and looked at this information and compiled it in ways that, as far as I know, have never been compiled in this way before. So this baseline data, the literature review, the data on each region and each country, these are unique resources all in one place. And I think it all blends together rather nicely to have a comprehensive volume like this.
Thanks, Kevin. Really, really interesting. And I'm going to steal that quote from your colleague about the difference between what should be and what is. That's something I feel I might use often. It's probably going into my Christmas shopping list for that alone. Susanna, how about you? Why would you recommend that people read this book?
Well, Kevin has so nicely covered it all that I find it really difficult to add something, but to talk about, I would like, not but and I would like to say, well, one of the prominent things in this book is that we're not looking at quality assurance for the sake of quality assurance. we're trying to locate it within the broader tertiary education landscape and policy instruments, where it stands and how it links to them, and what is its role, what it does at this point, and what it could do potentially to make it better, to better contribute to tertiary education system enhancement. Hence, we explored how the narrative is changing in all policy documents, soft regulation policy documents, in SDG, in Global Recognition Convention, in the Revised Recognition Convention, in all UN documents that are coming out. You would see narrative changing from education, just education, to always having quality education. Like access to education is already permanently changed to access to quality education. What are the implications? And the implications are really very deep. And this is what the book is exploring. So it's a good contribution for different audiences. Like it's a good contribution for policymakers when they want to revise their policy frameworks, because it gives a comprehensive coverage, not only from zooming into one region on the other, but as Kevin rightly mentioned, it covers comparatively across all the regions, plus zooms into specific experiences of regions and specific countries as well, bringing in the best practices or the lessons learned and the areas of enhancement that are out there. And most importantly, it highlights the role of the culture that we need to consider in any policy development and policy instrument establishment out there, and how quality assurance is to be considered within the culture to contribute to its best. So this is where we see it. For students, this is a good source, a one-stop source for their research, for their knowledge about the trends. For faculty members, it's sort of a call that, well, we always hear that faculty members are complaining, you know, they think of external quality assurance as a burden, as something that complicates their lives. We wanted them to convey the message that this is the broader role of quality assurance, this is the broader role of it, and there is a huge expectation from it if we want to make the tertiary education more useful and more relevant to link to the socioeconomic needs globally as well. So there are different audiences that this book could benefit from different perspectives. And especially the book, as Kevin mentioned, it looks from two perspectives, from external and from internal. We look at the clashes between the two. We look at the clashes between from higher education and quality assurance bodies coming together, and how to understand them, how to interpret them, how to make it work. Basically, I hope I convinced you to do your shopping list, to check in the boxes, or not yet.
No, I'm definitely sold. Thank you very much. I mean, it really does sound like a fascinating and, you know, multi-layered, multi-dimensional piece of work.
Yeah.
So let's ask the sort of burning question then. You've talked about this as being a summary of the global trends. So really simply, Susanna, what are some of the noticeable trends in quality assurance at the global level?
Well, shall we split, Kevin, between external and internal, you and me, to respond to this question? Okay. Well, in general, starting from external quality assurance, if you look at the overall global population, at this point, like we were able to count around 100,000 tertiary education institutions. And when we talk about tertiary education institutions, we look at the UNESCO levels 5 and above. So it covers all the levels from higher diploma to a doctoral level. And what was the 100,000 institutions, and one of the striking findings out there that while around 50% of tertiary education institutions are are complaining of multiple cycles of external reviews of external quality assurance and the accreditation fatigue and the burden on the institution, there is a huge army of more than around 50 or more % of tertiary education institutions that haven't been touched by quality assurance, are not practicing quality assurance, neither from internal nor from external perspective. So there is a whole army of tertiary education providers that are yet to be covered. So this is a big gap. And why this is really very important, because while when we were talking about the change in narrative, access to quality, access to education, and now it is access to quality education. So how are we supposed to close this gap? Because with quality assurance covering only partially the tertiary education provisions, it seems like we are going back to elites, from massification back to elites, because we are not covering them all, and there is a big gap out there. This is one of the major things from external quality assurance. When we go to the external quality assurance bodies themselves, we have been able to identify around 800 quality assurance bodies. And only around 400 or 380 some are registered with or members with networks. Some of them have multiple memberships, and when you combine, it's only around 48% that are members of regional or global networks, which means that we have an oversight. We know who they are. But just imagine the army of quality assurance bodies which we don't know who they are, and there is no oversight over them. And so in terms of credibility and trust, how do we ensure that there is a credibility and trust, and how do we avoid and resolve the issue of accreditation mills out there, right? So we were suffering from diploma mills in higher education, but accreditation mills are also a tangible topic out there. When you look from the 300 and around 400 quality assurance bodies, it's only 178 have been externally recognized. So it's even lesser. And majority of them are in Europe and in the US. Other regions are still catching up with this. So there is a huge army of quality assurance bodies which are yet to be externally evaluated for trust and credibility, for transparency issues, and for just manifestation of the quality of their provisions themselves and how they could be used in linking with the recognition of qualifications. And this takes us to the issue of the recognition of qualification. When it comes to quality, access to education and access to quality education, how do we, as quality assurance bodies, make sure that the qualification recognition is facilitated by the quality assurance, which has so many gaps out there? So this still needs to be addressed. There are good achievements also, lots of quality assurance, but on the other side, the achievements from the QA bodies who have been well established and are supporting systems beyond their mandate and beyond their boundaries. They support other systems to enhance and to build on their capacity. So there are many, of course, there are many good practices out there too, a lot of good cooperation, joint efforts. So this is also a notable practice out there. And most importantly, I would like to bring to attention the fact of two more things, and then I will give the floor to Kevin. Regardless of decades of quality assurance, it seems there is no convergence around quality and quality assurance, the definition of quality and quality assurance. Even in Europe, in European region, when you look at how they responded to the definition of quality, what is quality for them, you would find although the European area is the only area where there is a convergence around regional standards and guidelines, European standards and guidelines, still convergence around quality definition and quality assurance is yet to come into being. And I'm not even speaking about other regions globally and the global convergence around the quality terms. And also another notable finding here is that you have seen how many quality assurance networks are there. Around 23 and 23 quality assurance networks. It seems like, and if you zoom into regions, you would see like quality assurance networks are popping up here and there. The question is why? Because they see gaps. So regardless of the number of the networks out there, they are still emerging and they are proliferating, but there is no unity among them. So the system is becoming more and more fragmented at the global level because there is no unifying power to bring all these networks together and to have them join their efforts to start contributing to the broader community. So the fragmentation at the global quality assurance is still there. I'll stop here and give the floor to Kevin.
Great. Thanks, Susanna. Again, it's a disadvantage to go second on these questions because like I was making notes and scratching things off my list as Susanna was talking and thinking also about what I could talk about here. Let me just pop off of one of the last one of the things that Susanna closed with, the quality definition, because that has an internal component to it as well. When we asked institutions what their definition of quality was, I think the most common response was excellence. And to me, that's a synonym. That's not a definition. And trying to figure out what people mean. And it seems there's a lot of bespoke definitions, like, well, what does it mean for us in this context? And that suggests to me that there's the vagueness around quality must have some useful institutional purpose to keep people from having perhaps to make the hard decisions about what's going on. And I think that's an important aspect to focus on about what is this notion of quality. Another thing that, so on to, trends that I picked up on in the internal dimensions. Technology, artificial intelligence came up repeatedly from people talking about what they were doing. And a lot of times talking about it as an opportunity. You can collect data more efficiently, for example, using technology. You're not using paper and pencil. You're not having to manually tabulate things. It's easier to get information and gather information. And it's also easier to analyze the data and the information, whether through AI or through more traditional methods, to really input this information and get what is useful. In fact, in full disclosure, we used AI in many places to help us understand some of the dimensions of our focus groups, for instance, like to try to help us pull out some of the major trends and themes and those sorts of things to help us figure that out. So it's a powerful tool from that way. And a lot of people recognize it as potentially transformative within their institutions that are often stressed for resources, both human and financial, in order to do the work that they need to do. But it was also seen as a threat too. And one of the ways that it's a threat is there becomes information overload. Yes, it's a lot easier to collect information, but you have so much information. What do you do with it? Like, how do you actually make this useful information and things that you can tap into with that? It's dehumanizing in a way. So if we really think of education as fundamentally about the exchange between humans, between people, understanding learning as an intimate human act, interspersing technology with that may break those bonds or break that meaning associated with it. And then the final thing is it raises the possibility of fake credentials, fake authorization, those sorts of things, because it's so easy to create things. There's been instances in the United States of completely fake websites being created like that, representing universities in order to perpetuate fraud, fake reports of quality, responses, and those sorts of things that are increasingly difficult to recognize of where they come from and how they might be used. And unethical actors, let's say, might take advantage of that, take advantage of these gaps in the system in order to gain external recognition for their own internal, perhaps financial benefit, instead of for the quality improvement that it's intended to be. Another trend from the internal perspective is really there was remarkable similarity of internal processes across the board, even when there's a diversity of external processes. So virtually everybody talked about a self-study or reports or something like that where they did internally. Increasingly, these are centralized. So the institution itself has an office or an entity that is guiding these processes. We have specialists. We have people whose job it is to deal with quality assurance. This isn't just an ad hoc representation in many institutions. So that similarity of internal processes is really important. But at the same time, what it seemed to be is the internal was following external. So the external processes really did help define what the internal pieces might be. And I think that goes back to something that Susanna mentioned about, what did you say, 50% of institutions aren't touched by external quality assurance, which means they likely don't have internal quality assurance, because the internal quality assurance seems to emerge and evolve in a structured, institutionalized way when the external systems require it. I'll just note on the regional networks, there are regional networks of universities, of higher education institutions that aren't explicitly about quality assurance, but most of them, I would say all of them, have quality assurance as an important component of what they're interested in and what they're expected to do. And so this suggests that quality assurance is clearly important, that there are similarities and common interests across these regions that these organizations are recognizing and taking advantage of, even given Susanna's caveat about the splintering of quality assurance, or there's not a unifying nature of it as well. Again, something that Susanna mentioned is frustration with external quality assurance within the internal committee, whether it's relevant, whether it really fits what they need to do, whether it's asking for information that's redundant or irrelevant to their nature. And so kind of frustration with the extra work that might be required, particularly in those systems where they're under multiple external evaluators, trying to figure out how to take that into play. And then I'll just say politics writ large, because it comes up in different ways for different places. I know in the United States, my own country, the politics have really made a big difference in terms of how institutions think about quality and think about what they're doing. And we see that duplicated in other places, particularly after elections or other forms of change of government, where policies might shift rather dramatically from one governing body to the next. So I'll stop there then. Thank you.
I mean, amen to that last point, Kevin. I've got a couple of questions in the chat, one of which you've kind of touched on. So I might just ask you both if you would like to elaborate on the question that Valda Alain has asked, which is artificial intelligence a challenge or an opportunity for assuring quality? Kevin, do you want to expand a bit on what you've just said, and then I'll pass that one over to Susanna?
Yeah, and I mean, as I said, it's both. It's a powerful tool, and it's a subversive tool. So I think thinking about it in both ways is important. Again, the power of it comes from the simplicity that it gives to complex tasks, particularly if they're being used by experts and expertise. So people who already have an idea of what they're looking for, the artificial intelligence and other forms of technology expedite this notion of trying to understand what you're talking about, and makes the labor of quality assurance at least modestly more straightforward, even simpler. The danger, of course, comes from not being able to tell whether there's a human behind it or not, and particularly in some of these advanced models of quality assurance, it's difficult to understand what's going on. And I didn't mention it in this way, but I think from an institutional perspective, I don't think we're very far away from an AI university emerging and asking for external quality assurance accreditation for its model, and asserting that it can uh, uh, match up well against existing universities and maybe even be superior to existing universities in some respects. And so I think that's something that the quality assurance community needs to take seriously, about understanding what do we do when we have a proposal for a university that essentially uses artificial intelligence as its model. It would be good to get ahead of that question rather than to be reactive.
I mean, for me, that's a really interesting question. I think AI speaks to us about the nature of a university and a higher learning institutions. You know, it's easy enough to transmit knowledge through AI, but transmitting understanding is a completely different thing, isn't it?
It is. And, I'll say in my own teaching, I've really thought deeply about what I'm expecting students to learn versus what I'm expecting them to be able to understand and access. The recalling of facts, while it's important in terms of how we think about stuff, those facts are at our fingertips, right? We don't have to hold them in our head. If you are examining a student on what they know, how do you design an examination that is not easily done by artificial intelligence or other forms of technology? And I think if we're thinking about quality within the university, we really have to think deeply about what is that human element that comes into play? What's that ineffable quality that we're talking about that makes a university special, that really can't or shouldn't be duplicated by technology?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. Susanna, what about you? So how can artificial intelligence serve us in external quality assurance and in looking, I guess, across kind of global themes and patterns within that? And what are the risks it poses to us?
Oh, very good question. And I would like to refer to the data that we collected through this study, because we also looked at factors that influence, and advanced technology was one of the factors that was explored. And actually, there was a lot of discussion on the uses of AI in internal and external quality assurance, and how this could be supported. But again and again, well, it could be used and it could be abused, as we all said, right? And depending on how you use it. And that is why the paramount importance here is to establish frameworks within which, and frameworks of integrity, transparency, and those things need to be established to support the AI to serve the purpose. And this is something that also came into discussion, that, well, there are uses out here and there, but since there is no framework to regulate it, it seems to be a bit not safe and secure to do that, right? So this is one of the things. Another thing is that it all comes to the data. Well, artificial intelligence doesn't function on its own. You have to feed something into it, right? And if you don't feed an accurate information into it, you're not going to get anything accurate out of it. And hence, if you go back to the issues that we had handling the data collection, I would say that there is lots of things that we should still do to make sure that artificial intelligence does serve and benefit. There is lots of potential, but also we also need to ourselves learn how to use it to benefit and to make most out of it. So yes, it could be used and it could be abused. It could be threat. It could be opportunity. It depends on human intelligence to make it work for itself.
Thanks, Susanna, and human character as well, I guess. I mean, all of those things. Our very good friend Scott Blair is asking, as someone who advocates that higher education institutions, tertiary education institutions, take a whole institution approach to embedding sustainability across the curriculum, campus, and community in response to the climate emergency, he's interested to know whether there are global trends that you've seen through this study that support that urgent and important transformative change. Susanna, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Scott, for always your flagship question on sustainability. I really appreciate bringing that into point, like into discussion, and very important one. As I've said, we looked at the how quality assurance support the Sustainable Development Goals, right, SDGs, right? And there were questions we explored about external factors, which also included the health, environment, calamities, military tensions out there. We looked at all of this. And of course, in one of the analysis, we do look into the what is the environment in the global megatrends. You will see the major the bigger ecosystem, global ecosystem within which higher education and tertiary education operates, and within which quality assurance is embedded and serves its purposes. And indeed, we already touched a bit into the politics area. Like 2024 was prominent year, and the first and the only year in the history of humankind where 78 governments changed their presidents. That was a major change in the political arena, driving different agendas. And, we have seen the consequences. In 2025, we have seen lots of changes out there in terms of politics, in terms of how they refer to sustainability. Well, in the recent Higher Education Observatory of UNESCO, if you look at the countries, it's only 11% of countries have sustainability embedded in their higher education strategy and policy making. And well, what does it say? It says, like, if you don't define, then you cannot measure. If you cannot measure, you cannot improve. This is all logically linked with each other. And at this point, we have found that these are yet to be framed properly. We all speak the same word. We all pronounce the same word, sustainability. But believe me, the three of us here on the screen, if you tell sustainability, we will interpret it in three different ways, and all of us will be correct. Whatever you put under this theme, it's correct. The matter here is how you measure it, because if you want to improve, you need to be able to measure it, and hence definitions, policy instruments to support those definitions. These are really very important, and with only 11% of countries having that definition or clarity on the agenda, on the strategies, by 2030, SDGs are a bit challenging to achieve, but we still have lots of hopes for that.
Yeah, indeed. The old problem of being divided by a common language, huh?
Yeah, common language. And plus, we'll talk about sustainability again, and it's around 100 instances of military tensions were identified only in 2024. So if this is happening globally, then you cannot achieve sustainability only with this small portion of population or small portion of developed countries. Mm-hmm. If we talk about sustainability, if we talk about bigger issues like the environment, it's a bigger issue. Quality assurance has a role to play, but I don't think that this is the role of accreditation. It's a bigger framework, bigger policy instruments that need to be put in place where quality assurance could be of support.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. Kevin, do you want to add into that answer?
Yeah, and I think in part, the line divided by a common language. I mean, even the word, sort of like quality has different sorts of meanings. Sustainability can be thought of in different kinds of ways as well. The environmental sustainability obviously is quite important, and how do universities think about their global footprint, particularly when internationalization and travel and things like that are something that's so important, and the environmental costs of international conferences, for example, international collaborations, things along those lines come into play. But the other thing, and this is in sustainability, is also sustainability from an organization, an institutional system basis. How do we keep this thing going when it's have so many different pressure points associated with it? How do we think about it financially in order to make sure that the resources are available to serve the growing numbers of students that are interested in education? How do we make sure that we're able to provide quality education to everyone rather than having a plethora of these demand-absorbing institutions that are really barely tertiary in their perspective and outcome? So thinking about it that way as well. Um, I think another part of this sustainability is the notion of refugee, forced migration, status of individuals, and how we think about those credentials and credentialing of people who don't maybe have access to their transcripts any longer, who can't demonstrate the learning that they've done in their prior country because that doesn't exist anymore. They don't have access to it anymore. And that there, I think there is a quality assurance job at play. How does quality assurance think about assessing quality when the institutional link to it has been broken? Whether permanently, temporarily, forcefully, or voluntarily. I think that's an important dimension that we have to think of as well. I wish Francesc was here because he has these numbers clear on it, but the numbers of individuals who have moved from their home country and are residing in other places now is the highest it's ever been, and the political dimensions of that are also clear as countries, the humanitarian costs of hosting individuals are strong. And from a university perspective, thinking about how you move these individuals into a structured educational process where they might not have structure in order to serve as their base. So I think that's an important aspect of sustainability as well.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That issue of global migration and particularly refugees is pressing, I think, in this piece, and something that we're increasingly having to grapple with, isn't it? Somebody has asked, could you share some of the most prominent and effective internal quality assurance processes used in higher education globally, based on your study, and outline any recommendations you would make for strengthening these practices? Kevin, I'm going to come to you on this one first.
Great. Well, I stumble over the word effective in the question because I mean, in all honesty, we don't have a structure for assessing how effective they are. We can talk about how common different things are, and I mentioned some of them. This notion of a self-study, for instance, this notion of thinking internally about how to do it and how to make sure that the processes are in place, having the organizational capacity to think about quality is something that that I believe is effective, but whether we actually have the data to support it is something that's kind of difficult for me at least, from a scholarship perspective, to really hang my hat on in a strong way. And I think that's one place that we need to really think about measuring quality assurance and the effectiveness of quality assurance. Especially in the absence of a solid and well-accepted definition of quality would be part of it as well. But again, I'll go back to the point that I made before. Whether or not things are effective, there seems to be a common model for internal quality assurance among those institutions that reported it, among the experts that took a look at this information. It seems fairly common for institutions to have quality assurance structures formally embedded within their institutions, to have budgets associated with this, to have experts within their institution who are in charge of quality assurance. Those seem to be fairly common globally. And as someone who studies policy, I'm always interested when there seems to be commonality across a wide range of organizational context and cultural context. Where does that commonality come from, especially since we have a fractured system of quality assurance? We have INQAAHE guidelines and best practices and things along those lines. Have those really made a difference? Or are those simply reflective of what the on-the-ground reality already was when they were constructed? I think those are some of the questions that I would like to see continue to be pursued.
Thank you. Susanna, do you want to elaborate on that question?
Yeah, absolutely. we did ask about, during the focus group, we did ask about effectiveness of quality assurance mechanisms. And it seems like quality assurance has been able to effect some changes at institutional level when it comes to strategies, internal organizational setup, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to actually touching the teaching and learning, the faculty performance, these are the elements that seem to be not yet covered properly by quality assurance. So when it comes to the effectiveness level. And the institutional level changes that have happened, it seemed like it's more of compliance and compliance driven. The institutions that were that are usually they take a form of being a more reactive rather than proactive in quality assurance. The external quality assurance set the standards, we are in compliance, and we're good. But what goes beyond it, how to use quality assurance to benefit to improve the the tertiary education performance, the faculty performance, the student performance, and the employability, or use the quality assurance to go beyond what standards, external standards require. I think that this is not yet predominant in the systems that we explored. And most of the time, the faculty would be complaining about the load, about the fatigue, accreditation fatigue, about the multiple measurements, and they don't know what is the effect out of it because they don't see the benefits out of it. In some systems where they did have transnational quality assurance providers, they complained about the experts, external experts, and their lack of knowledge of the context and the culture to come up with the recommendations that are relevant to the systemic improvement. So there were lots of different, depending on the culture, depending on the region, there were different reflections on effectiveness of the internal quality assurance. But again and again, still, unfortunately, I always go back to the history. In end of 19th century, it all started from higher education institutions. It didn't start from external quality assurance. There was no external quality assurance body. And the institutions decided, well, we need to manifest quality. And these are the things we need to do to prove that we have the quality is in place. Gradually, they gave up the power to external quality assurance, and they never want to take it back. As we know, in the lead standards, like European standards guidelines, INQAAHE international standards and guidelines, we always acknowledge that the primary responsible for quality assurance is the institution. Unfortunately, this statement is only in the standards, and it's not reflected in the actual practices. So we would wish to see on how to give it back the ownership to the institutions rather than compel or impose something from outside.
That's a really good point. I like that a lot. Listen, we've got a really good question here. I think this is building on what you've both been talking about very compellingly about the lack of a definition. So based on the work that you've done, what would you put forward as a definition of quality in the tertiary education sector? And especially when we're faced with existential threat, kind of ranging from, I guess, political erosion of trust in tertiary education, in knowledge, in science, threats like AI, threats like climate change, and so on. When we're trying to deal with all of those things, what would your definition of quality be? Kevin, you look as though you've got something ready to fall from the tip of your tongue, so I'm coming to you first.
No, I should have closed my camera is what I should have done on that one. This is the tough thing about what is quality. We can give you a dictionary definition of it, right? But really you have to think about, well, what does it mean in practice? Like, how do people actually exhibit it? And it's the I know it when I see it aspect of it, that there's also different kinds of indicators, assumptions and biases around quality. Certain types of institutions are inherently high quality and others inherently are low quality. are other ways that people think about it based off of uh, uh, their own biases, their own prejudices, even about what might go on. There's also the element of quality that we see in a lot of institutions or a lot of systems that require foreign evaluation of quality. The assumption is that the foreign model of quality is inherently superior, and therefore, if you match it up against what we do internally, that will balance our quality as well. I think it's really important, particularly for something that says that it's about quality assurance, to know what the hell it is that we're assuring, right? I think that's a really important dimension to it. And I think the other part of it is that we should understand why we think quality is important and why we think quality assurance actually matters to quality. And to be a little provocative on this point, we have all these struggles with institutional quality, for instance, even when we have quality assurance principles. And the answer, when we say, oh, well, we still have low quality, the answer seems to be, well, we just need more quality assurance, rather than thinking about, well, wait a minute, is there something about quality assurance that is not fit for purpose, right? That it isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so rather than simply saying we need more, thinking more creatively about what it is that we're trying to demonstrate to the public, to the stakeholders, to whatever the public nature of quality, whoever we're assuring it to have a little bit more firm grasp about what that is and why it matters whether one institution has a certain form of quality assurance metrics versus another institution that might have something different. I should say that this goes back to the history of quality assurance, which was largely a matter of how do you determine whether a student is qualified to move from one institution to the other, right? How do you transfer that knowledge or transfer that expertise? And so this notion was like this seal of approval kind of thing to say, okay, this represents quality, and then allows the student to have mobility of that knowledge into other circumstances, other nations, other jobs, other educational opportunities.
Yes, indeed. And of course, mobility remains important, but perhaps in slightly different ways and contexts. Susanna, can I ask you to be very brief because we're running up against the end and I don't want this to be the final question if we can help it.
Yeah, this is like, it can be very brief, but I will try. Well, we have been preaching for years, for decades, at least for the last 20 years, that quality, there are two different definitions. Quality definition among the quality assurance people, which is fitness of purpose, different way interpreted. And this is how we measure. We will look at the mission of the institution, and then we say, well, you're doing good, but who defines the mission? What is the quality of the mission itself, right? We're not yet talking about this, but there is other part of quality, which the bigger society, well, these definitions are not clear for the society. The language is not clear. So from the society perspective, when you look at the quality, what they want, as Kevin rightly mentioned, the student that graduated and performs and contributes to society. This is the performance, right? So what is the to what extent that the outputs coming from this institution, whether this is research, whether this is the student that is graduate coming out of it, or any service of society, to what extent it impacts the change, it supports the society to improve. This is the definition of quality for me, and whether we are able to promote it or not, for me, it has always been relevance. Whether the services offered by the institutions are relevant and they are actually responding to the societal socioeconomic needs. In that sense, if the institution is capable of contributing to that extent, then yes, I would say there is a quality. And for the students, it's credentials. And there are credentials that could have value and credentials that have no value at all. So having valuable credentials, this is something that we need to think about, because end of the day, the students are investing into their future, and the value that they are taking with the credential is something that for me is the quality.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I've taken the absolute liberty of putting my own agency's definition of quality, which I think is quite clear. And actually, by quality assurance agency standards, quite brief. So, one final question to you both then, as we bring this absolutely fascinating session to an end. Having done all of this work, having had this huge range of data and conversations and surveys and comparison and contextualization, what do we still need to know? What is there left to discover in this space? Susanna, I'm going to ask you to start with that.
Well, again, if Kevin, you agree, I will do the external, you do the internal. This way we will split. I'm sure that we can do, exchange as well, but still, for me, at the global quality assurance, global tertiary education level, well, we have to clearly define what is the role of quality assurance within the bigger agenda of tertiary education. It seems like we are, there is lots of room for us, but whether we're doing it or not is not yet in alignment. So there should be some inquiry into this, some study into this, and not only the study, but development also to bridge those gaps. The next thing would be is fighting for the fragmentation. As we have seen, we are all struggling to, quality cannot be obtained in isolation, in my own niche, or in small, only in patched ways. No, it's a systemic thing. And to help it, maybe we should think on how to join efforts and support the systems which are actually needing the support in quality assurance. Explore further what kind of need is required in different cultures to help them build their own systems rather than build it for them. So far, when the support was coming from international experts, they would just build something for the systems and build the capacity for them to build their own systems. How to do that, how to support those systems to take ownership of their own quality and quality assurance. These are the areas that we still need to explore further, and most predominantly the fragmentation in quality assurance that still needs to be addressed. And last but not least, linking quality assurance closer to the sustainable development goals, to the global conventions, to the regional recognition conventions, to UN directives, like bringing it closer so that quality assurance acts as a driver for their success. Well, that would be really something to invest in and make the transformative changes happen.
Failed to hit my microphone button in time. Thank you, Susanna. I completely agree. Kevin, please tell us about internal quality
Great.
assurance.
Again, with the clear disadvantage of going second. Let me just first say what we still need to know is what we got wrong, right? So corrections, additions, more information, please send them our way. I think our contact information will be shared with you before, but we know this is, we think this is the best option that we have, but we know that there are things that we must have gotten wrong, or things that you can clarify from your own perspective as well. So please feel free to share. I think one big part that I think we still need to really understand is the relationship between politics and quality assurance. In some systems in the United States, for instance, quality assurance is sort of set up almost as a buffer between politics and the institution, and that buffer is rather weak now, to say the least, and to try to understand how that actually exists, and if that's a value of quality assurance, how it can be sustained, so that the change in politics doesn't have such dramatic changes within institutions, again, as a quality dimension too. I think details are important to make sure we're clear. The regions that we put things in, those were a convenient construction, right? They're not real. That we're not arguing that these regions necessarily have commonalities associated with them, and it masks a lot of institutional variety in there. So it would be good to drill down into the regions and highlight these country distinctions a little bit better. There was a question in the chat, I think, from Hans DeWitt about transnational quality assurance. And I'll just talk about it from the institutional perspective. Those institutions that are moving into branch campuses have other locations around the world. To what extent is their home quality assurance systems and structures internally really able to evaluate the quality in these remote locations? It's a lot easier to judge quality across the quad than it is across the globe. And so trying to think through a little bit better how that actually occurs. We had some information from the survey about these sort of transnational things, but we really didn't have the opportunity to drill down into it much. And I think that's an important dimension in globalization as well. How various sectors treat quality assurance, particularly private institutions, how they think about quality assurance, whether it's just part of their business model or if they think about it in terms of quality improvement, or if it's just a box to be checked. I think thinking a little bit better about how different institutions view quality assurance, especially in light of the comment about how faculty are may be resistant to it. Is that faculty resistance different in different kinds of institutions? And then I think finally, I would just say from a training perspective, do we have good systems to train our quality assurance specialists and experts? Right now, it seems mostly on the job training. There doesn't seem there. I mean, there are a few workshops and things like that that are sponsored by institutions. But do we need an entry level credential? Do we need something that really authorizes people to serve in these kinds of roles and make sure that they are well informed about what the responsibilities they have and the broader context of the service that they're providing?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to draw us to a close here. People are beginning to drift out. We're a little bit ahead of time, but I think we haven't got time to do justice to another one of these really very thought-provoking questions that we're getting from our fantastic attendants. So thank you so much, Susanna and Kevin, for your contributions to the conversation today. I am absolutely staggered by the scope and the volume of the work that you've managed to bring together in this global study. And although, Susanna, I'm really horrified to learn that almost 50% of tertiary education providers have no internal quality assurance, I'm also hugely optimistic at the potential of this kind of study to demonstrate value of quality assurance and hopefully therefore to kind of increase its scope. And surely in this time of increasing population mobility, the need to sustain trust in tertiary education by ensuring that qualifications are underpinned by quality assured education is more essential than ever, I'd have thought. Anyway, thanks to your wonderfully enlightening remarks, I'm really excited to read the book now. I'm just going to remind our audience that it's available from the 18th of December, and I encourage all of you to grab your free copy and download it today. And on behalf of, download it on the 18th of December. On behalf of INQAAHE, thank you to everybody who's come to this session. Your questions and comments have created a really engaging session, and we hope that it's been valuable to you in your work and thinking about quality assurance in your area. And last, but certainly by no means least, I'd like to remind you that we will be hosting the 2026 INQAAHE Forum in the beautiful Sun City, just outside Johannesburg, South Africa, in February. Quality assurance as an impactful tool for higher education today and tomorrow, and that will be the 3rd to the 6th of February 2026. We do hope you'll join us. You can find the details on the INQAAHE website. And as always, as we close, we're here with you and for you. So please do reach out, stay in touch, and thank you so much for coming today to listen. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Kevin. It's been an absolute delight to spend some time with you this afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Vicky, for very wonderful moderation and chairing the session. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Thanks, everybody, for being here and making it a meaningful discussion. Thanks a lot.
Indeed. Thank you.
We're always here with you and for you.